They called it aid, a lifeline, a savior. But what if this lifeline wasn't help, but a cage? What if the money meant not prosperity, but submission? For decades, billions flowed from the world's richest nations to the poorest corners of the globe under the watchful eye of one institution, the International Monetary Fund. A guardian angel or the puppet master? This is the secret life of the IMF, empire without borders. In 1 foot place, born from the ashes of World War II, the IMF wasn't designed to rule the world, but to prevent future financial Armageddon. Think of it as a global bank, ensuring countries could lend and borrow safely, avoiding the currency chaos that could spark new conflicts. Its charter: promote international monetary cooperation, exchange stability, and orderly exchange arrangements. In the early days, it was about rebuilding Europe, the Marshall Plan. It was about collective security through economic interdependence. But the world changed. The Cold War ended. Globalization surged. And the old rules began to shift. What started as a system for stability slowly evolved into something else. How did an institution for stability become a tool for control? It wasn't through overt conquest, but through conditionality. When a developing country faces a crisis or a currency collapse, a national debt crisis, it often turns to the IMF for emergency loans. Remember the 1980s? That was the peak. Punchline: the IMF didn't just lend money. It dictated how it was spent. These weren't loans for building schools or hospitals. They were loans for survival, and the price was steep. They demanded structural adjustment programs, or SAPs. Think of it like this: the IMF is a very smart, very stern banker. You ask for a loan, and they say, fine, but you must stop printing money, cut government spending, slash subsidies, and open your markets wide to our investors. They told these nations, fix your budget deficit, lower your interest rates, privatize your state industries, all under the guise of restoring economic health and facilitating aid for development. The money was crucial, often preventing complete financial collapse. But the terms? They forced countries to dismantle their own social safety nets, reduce public spending, and prioritize repaying foreign creditors, including other rich nations and international banks. It was a Trojan horse: aid inside, economic policy dictates outside. A carefully crafted narrative that painted the IMF as a benevolent guide, not a coercive force. This is where the empire without borders began to take shape. The 1980s debt crisis wasn't just an economic downturn. It was a geopolitical earthquake. Suddenly, the IMF wasn't just an international lender. It was a powerful instrument for shaping the political and economic landscape of the global South. Countries like Mexico, Argentina, Zambia, they faced brutal conditions. Critics argued the policies only worsened poverty and inequality, leaving nations trapped in cycles of debt. There were moments of dissent. The African debt crisis in the 1970s and 80s highlighted the unfairness. Some nations, like Bolivia under President Hugo Banzer, 1979, faced IMF-backed regimes that suppressed dissent to secure loans. But the narrative held. The IMF, backed by the US and other major powers, presented itself as the indispensable guardian of global finance. Critics were dismissed as populists or Luddites, threatening economic progress. And the consequences? They echo to this day. Decades of conditional loans have left countless nations saddled with unsustainable debt. Interest payments often consume a massive chunk of national budgets, starving governments of resources for schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Structural adjustment programs often gutted public services. Social safety nets vanished. Unemployment soared. Indigenous industries crumbled under privatization and cheap imports from the north. The empire without borders manifested through economic dependency. Nations became reliant on loans from a small group of powerful creditors, including the IMF itself. Sovereignty was traded for access to capital, often at the cost of national identity and popular will. This created fertile ground for corruption. International financial institutions and powerful private bankers gained immense influence. Critics point to ongoing scandals and the revolving door between IMF officials and the finance industries. But the IMF adapted. In the 1990s, it embraced poverty reduction strategy papers and conditionality 2.0. The language changed, but the core mechanisms often remained. The narrative evolved from shock therapy to inclusive growth. Look at today. Countries still turn to the IMF in crises. Think of recent aid packages tied to austerity measures in nations like Ukraine or Zambia. The old debates resurface. Is this truly aid or a new form of control? So, what is the secret life of the IMF? It's not a literal empire with soldiers and castles. It's something far more insidious, yet equally powerful: the weaponization of debt and economic necessity. It's the persistent narrative. We are here to help you, but only if you follow our rules. A paternalistic fantasy that masks profound geopolitical realities. The debate continues. Is the IMF a necessary guardian angel, ensuring global economic stability? Or is it a subtle empire builder, extending its borders through financial strings and conditional aid? The lines remain blurred. The aid exists, the control exists. The question is, who benefits, and at what cost to justice and human dignity? What is the real cost of aid? Is prosperity defined by GDP growth or by human well-being? Share your thoughts in the comments below.